right. It's great to have a good crowd here tonight, and hopefully we will all learn a little something about our swales and our sightlines, and hopefully we can end a little bit of the confusion that's out there. Um, Mr. Manager, why don't you introduce your staff that's here, and so we can start the process. Madam Clerk, are there more of the slides available?
They're being made.
They're being made, okay.
Mayor, before we start, can I make a quick announcement?
Yes, go ahead.
Sure. Mayor, members of the council, at this time, I'm announcing that the council will convene an attorney-client executive session pursuant to Section 286.011. The session will be held to discuss the lawsuit styled Miami Fourth Estate versus Village of Key Biscayne, case number 1:25-CV-22838-JEM. The matter of the meeting will be to discuss settlement negotiations and litigation strategy. We will notice this meeting for the future. It will probably occur before the March 10th meeting. Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thank you for the announcement. Mr. Manager.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In a second, I'll go ahead and introduce the staff, but really appreciate the opportunity to talk about swales. We've been talking about this for a while, so I really appreciate the community involvement and, of course, the council who's here to have this conversation. I have to my left our Public Works Director, Chris Miranda. Jeremy Carlos-Gauger is our Building, Zoning, and Planning Director, and our consultant who's been helping us work through this from Black and Veatch is Mike Huda. So we're here, Mr. Mayor, to talk, number one, about swales, to discuss the current state of where we are.
Oh, excuse me, and then we have our attorney, Chad Friedman, and our clerk, Jocelyn Coach.
We should get them all. Yeah, so sorry about that, Chad and Jocelyn, but you guys are just stellar performers. So anyway, so let's talk about what we're going to do today, Mr. Mayor and Council. First thing I think we need to do is really do what we call Swale 101, or Introduction to Swales. Truly understand what a swale is, what a swale isn't, why do swales exist, and I think there's a lot of differing opinions why they exist, but really understand from the council perspective, because it's important in order to make the decisions going forward to understand why we have swales. How we currently manage it, what are the village's responsibilities, what are residents' responsibilities, and also what are utility providers' responsibilities. Then we'll go through what our current status is, some of the challenges that we face right now, some of the things that our residents have done to react to it, and that'll be interesting. You'll see those pictures. And then also what regulations are in place, and then we'll take all that, package it together, and provide some recommendations on some short-term actions and enforcements that we can do now. And they're very discreet. We've got about 4 of them that we're going to be very clear on what we do. And then we have some midterm, long-term steps that lead to a greater vision. Part of that is reviewing the ordinance, understanding the ordinance, and making some changes to that that'll help us better enforce in the future. And then we'll also go over those as well. So all in all, there's about 6 recommendations between short-term, midterm. Hopefully we can walk out of at least with the short-term direction from the council. But before we get there, I want to make sure that Chris and Jeremy have an opportunity to set the conditions so you can understand the rules and then what we're seeing out in the community right now.
Okay.
So with that, Chris, take it away.
Sir, can I ask, are we residents going to have a say or explain?
You always have a say.
Well, we try.
Yes,
We try, but
and you succeed a lot.
no, we have been, as a long-time resident, and this goes back maybe how many managers ago? Chief Iglesias, I remember taking him around, and he said, "What do you want me to do? Half or more than half?"
But look, yes,
Are non-conformant.
that's why we're here to discuss, okay? And yes, of course you'll have input. John dealt with this issue. Greg Hahn dealt with this issue. I think I dealt with it also. So yes, we will come out with some recommendations here.
No, and I think you're right, Mr. Mayor. This is, it's a sensitive topic because this is very unique relationship in where the property is actually the village's, but we ask the residents to maintain it to a certain degree. It's kind of a strange partnership that we've got to walk through. And what the end state is, I think we've got to clearly understand what it is in the first place and then be able to come to a decision. I think that's what we need to do first.
Okay.
And we certainly will make sure the residents are part of that. So, Chris.
So let's start with the definition of a swale, which is, according to the Village of Key Biscayne's Ordinance 21-1, a swale, the portion of the public right-of-way that is not improved with pavement. That basically is from the edge of pavement, the edge of the roadway in front of your house, all the way to your property line. And some of the primary functions of a swale. Most importantly, drainage, stormwater runoff. It's an area where the impervious area of the asphalt lets the water run off into the grass and absorb that rainfall. It can be used for parking.
Before you get there, for the education of the public and for myself, the actual definition from edge of road to the property line is approximately how much in feet?
It varies. It's dependent on how wide the entire right-of-way is. The most common is about a 50-foot right-of-way. The roads are typically 20-foot wide. You divide it in half, so 25 feet to either side. Your road is 10 foot. Your swale should be approximately 15 feet. But we have 50-foot right-of-ways. We have 60-foot right-of-ways. We even have one area that has an 80-foot right-of-way.
So from edge of road from edge of road into your theoretical property would be 15 feet?
From the edge
To
of
be
road,
clear,
yes.
Edge of pavement.
Majority.
so, and to be
Majority.
clear, it's the unpaved area. So the
Unpaved.
sidewalk doesn't count either.
Where the water meter is.
Isn't the
To-
sidewalk shown?
A good way to tell where your property line is, where your water meter is, but WASA has been moving water meters forward in the wider right-of-ways. So if there's a sidewalk in front of your house, the back of sidewalk, typically that is your property line.
Thank you, Chris.
So parking is allowed.
And Chris, I do
swales.
want to do that. And so because again, this is an educational process, so let's, at the end of each slide, let's give the council members to ask those questions, because this is, as simple as it sounds, this is complex sometimes.
Yes.
In its simplicity.
Yeah, I think the big challenge is do people actually know where that swale boundary is? And based on the conversation we just had,
Right.
I have a feeling most people don't.
Right.
Chris, you mentioned, this is a right,
Yeah,
there's a question about the property line. You mentioned that everything, if you had a sidewalk in front of your property, that everything from the sidewalk back is your property line? I don't think that's the case. Your property line is defined by the plat,
It varies.
but I don't think, unless you had I'm sorry, unless you had a very short property line. Anyway, something
No,
to clarify.
Mr. Festa, that's not what he said. He said, actually, your property line is the edge of the swale. So can we let him go and then have an opportunity to ask questions as we go? Because I think there's a lot more that builds this up, but, yeah, so it is to the property line, to be clear. And sometimes that's sidewalks beyond it, usually it's much further in than the sidewalk. Yes.
So some of the things that are contained in the swale, obviously utilities, water, sewer, the trees that are in the swale. These are just some of the, as you can see on the screen, some of the supporting items that are on swales. Swale management and ownership. Although the swales are village-owned property, the right-of-way completely from one side to the other is village-owned. It is maintained, with the exception of trees, by the property owners. That's per code. The property owners are restricted about what they can place in the swales, and we must maintain a clear area according to code, and there's there's a definition for this 3-foot step-off or 6-foot step-off, dependent upon driveway parking on your properties, the capacity of parking that you have on your properties. Landscape materials that are allowed outside the 3-foot and 6-foot area, and the village-approved trees.
And one of the things I want to highlight at this point is that 3 and 6 foot difference. And Jeremy, can you explain that right now? Because that's going to be a significant part of this conversation as we go forward, because we do have two different standards.
I don't want to explain it yet. I'm going to show it through
You're going to show pictures?
illustrations.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
just
yeah.
a heads up, think 3,
So-
6, and that's going to be one of the issues that we are going to have to address, because it does create some level of confusion for both residents as well as code compliance.
All right, let me ask a question. In terms of parking, are you see this all the time, you have service vehicles that are stopped in the roadway. Are they supposed to be in the right-of-way, or are they supposed to be in the roadway?
They should not be blocking the path of travel.
Okay?
Excuse me, you say that, they're blocking both ways of travel, or if they park and the car can still go by, is that legal?
If they park and a car can go by, that's,
As long as they don't block traffic, they can park
Right.
on the street.
yeah, you can park on the swale.
I'm talking about, can you
Yeah.
park on the asphalt?
Yes.
That's,
Doesn't say no
you're,
parking, so
you're,
they can park
that's more of a police issue, and I would,
As long as it's not blocking.
yeah.
Yeah, as long as
As long
it's
as you're
not
not
blocking.
blocking completely.
Yeah.
But what does the code say?
The code,
Go
it's
to silence.
not in, it's a police matter. It's not
Right.
in our village
Chad,
ordinance.
what do you say on that?
We don't have ordinance-specific info on it. As far as parking to block the road. the
Like the
village will
landscaper
park.
contractors.
Yes.
Yeah.
Under the county code, there are provisions that we could utilize, if we wanted to. The issue is, from what I've heard in the past on enforcement is, where do the, contractors go? Because at some point, they're there to provide a service, but so where do they actually go, given the narrow streets? But there are provisions of the county code that we could enforce that are applicable within the village.
So I think we can illustrate a couple things and we'll see.
And we'll come back to it.
Yeah, because we want to focus on what we can do with our ordinance. I
Jeremy,
do think there's some
I think
enforcement.
what we're also discussing too is if you're having construction on your street, for example,
For instance,
for instance.
where you have, in
Right.
some cases, construction on both sides of the street.
Right. So currently, West Mashta has 4 houses going up on it, and they're pouring concrete. They're staging concrete trucks. Okay, that subcontractors are parking all over the swales. Okay, to the point where there's really very minimal amount of parking, and they're doing
Like near your house?
not near my house, just in general on the street.
It's yeah. This isn't a unique condition.
No, it's not a
It's a
unique
challenge,
condition at all. And I think what people are concerned about is that when somebody parks on the swale that you're responsible for, and they leave and they do a significant amount of damage to the swale, it becomes a recurring drama. So the last thing we want.
And if that's a dilemma, then is then that lawn service trailer that sits wholly on the roadway and
Like that, yeah.
it makes it hard to go by. So
Right.
we got to come to terms with, okay, either they're going to be on the swale or they're going to be on the street. You got to make up your mind.
Yeah. So I want to.
Unnecessarily, because basically, if the swale was constructed in such a manner that it could support the truck or the vehicle, they can park in either one. But right now, where people just have grass and dirt, that's the problem on the swale, especially in the areas where they don't get sun and then it becomes mud. So basically, I think we have to look at what materials can we use in the swales so people can park on them, because parking is a problem, one way or the other. So I think that's something.
And gravel-
Further down in the slides, I think Steve addresses that.
We have a
And
couple
I think,
recommendations, yes.
it's worth pointing out, yeah, we have the construction challenges, which is what a lot of this has been in reaction to.
Well,
But we also have regular service vehicles. We have,
Jeremy, go back to that slide. I mean, that slide right there is what John Festa was complaining about pretty significantly.
Yeah.
Because that basically is a safety issue for people, because at night you can't see that, right? So if somebody goes and pulls on there, and obviously that's being done to protect their lawn, because they're not their lawn, the swale, so they don't have to keep repairing it because of service
So-
vehicles.
it's worth noting in this case that something like this, there's probably not a code violation in any of these images.
So that, the stakes like that?
Yeah, let me get to that.
That's a
our
parking
next
violation.
part.
That's a parking
So
issue, not a.
in this case, though, it's
If I
worth
could-
it's
if I
worth
could real
pointing
quick,
out.
Give me one
Yeah,
second.
sure.
That's the 3 and 6 feet that I want you to keep in your
Yeah.
mind as we go
Yeah,
forward.
yeah. So
Who's gonna explain it?
You know, a lot of this is resident parking too. Like, this isn't just a contractor or service vehicle issue. The swales get used for parking by lots of folks. Worth pointing out that there's also been in the past plenty of alternative materials that the village, so technically 100% of that 3 and 6 foot zone is supposed to be sod and sod only per our code. That's silly. And I think our predecessors, Chris and not mine, have allowed other materials because out of necessity, or not enforced on other materials that simply can't grow, right? So there has been an acknowledgement of that. Now, the current state is a lot of people have put up barriers of one type or another. Now, the certain ones are explicitly forbidden in the code. Others are borderline. For instance, our code very specifically says that you are allowed to put landscape materials within, as long as you're outside of that 3 or 6 foot zone. And whether it's 3 or 6 feet is dependent on the amount of parking you have available on your driveway and on your site. So, which is always a little bit difficult to unpack, right, for a code if you're running around trying to enforce the code, figuring out whose driveway can accommodate what. That being said, I think
Jeremy, is that based on the form, on the square footage of the house, or how's that?
no. So the language is in here about exactly when a 3 foot. So driveways with 3+ vehicles must maintain a 3 foot sod only step off zone. If you have less than a 3 vehicle driveway, then you're required to have a 6 foot step off zone.
So the intent is to give them another place to park.
Yeah, essentially give them another place to park. So then it does say landscape materials are allowed, and landscape materials are, there are specific examples. You know, it's plants, it's rocks, you know, barriers, hedge defining barriers would be, I would consider that part of landscape materials. That is, obviously, it's a term that can be open to some interpretation. But, you know, these sorts of the barriers that you see on the bottom, in that case, you know, is that little post and rope, I would consider that a landscape material, right?
Well,
But the code explicitly says boulders are landscape material, and you are allowed to have those outside that 3 and 6 foot step off zone.
Outside of.
Outside
Not
the 3
in
foot.
it.
So in this case, those posts are
3 feet.
outside the 3 foot step off zone. So that's why I want to be clear. I think there's a lot of things that people assume are violations.
Are you saying that these are legal?
Those are, if you consider them landscape materials, yes. Yeah.
But that's what we're getting to.
That's
right?
why we're here. That's why we're here to
have that
discuss
conversation.
it. You are allowed, to be clear, you are allowed to have barriers outside the 3 and 6 foot zone. That barrier can be.
Is there a diagram? I want to know
Yeah,
when you talk
yeah.
about step
So,
off.
I want to see. Well, the 3 and 6 foot, I didn't do a diagram because it's literally like it's as far beyond.
From where to where?
No, not from the center. From the edge of
The
pavement.
edge of pavement.
it's towards the center of the street.
So from the edge of pavement
Towards the house.
on towards your house, that part has to stay clear.
Either 3 feet or
Beyond
6 feet.
or
depending.
6, depending on the. I'm gonna just say 3 feet, just so we can be a little more concise. And because the majority of our homes do have capacity, but the 3 foot rule means that you can have tall shrubs, you're allowed to have your own tree, well, no, trees we still maintain control over with the street tree master plan. But you're allowed to have a 30-foot shrub there, per our code. You're allowed to, at the 3-foot zone, yes, yes. No, you are allowed to have, you're limited to a 30-inch shrub within the 3-foot zone when it's planted around a tree. Beyond the 3-foot zone, you are allowed to have essentially unlimited height landscaping, as long as it's not a tree. And you're allowed to have boulders, and you're allowed to have any landscape material of your choosing.
So when you say outside the
The
step
3-foot
off,
zone.
the little rope fence that you showed there was right at the border. It was on
So-
the grass, but it was at the border of
Yeah,
the,
so-
of the pavement.
In this case, this one is clearly in violation, right? And plastic sticks, I would never consider landscape material.
Well, how,
This one is 3 feet away from edge of pavement.
but because it's a piece of wood and it's painted white.
Well, he's
with
interpreting
rope-
piece of wood
Look,
to be landscape
that's one of the reasons we're here this evening,
Yeah, to have
is
that
to have this
determine whether
conversation
that's something we want
about,
or not.
You can make the argument that because you bought that gravel at the landscaping store, it's landscaping material.
I 100% would assume that gravel is a landscape material.
Okay, so
Like some
therefore-
people use
therefore
it
it's
as
legit.
mulch. Well, it's,
No, but right now, our
It's-
code specifically said sod.
yeah, our code says within the 3-foot zone, sod only. So we'll come back to that.
I mean,
Remember,
aren't we here
remember,
to
this is why we're
clarify
doing,
the stuff, what's reasonable, so you're saying what is, and then we'll get back to what we should.
Yeah,
what should
yeah,
be.
yeah,
exactly.
Okay, so-
We're trying to tell you what the code is, right? That's what's important and why it's in some way it's a little
Why
confusing.
it's so complicated, yeah.
Right. And I also think there's a lot of assumptions that people are made, oh, you're not enforcing the code, or you're not doing this. It's all, actually, the code is a little bit more flexible than I think people think. So I think another one of these is with site triangles. So our code, just so everybody knows, a site triangle is that when you approach an intersection, it's the clear triangle. It's that area in yellow here. But that 15 feet is measured from the edge of pavement. So I think this would probably be an intersection that people would assume, oh, that hedge is in the site triangle, but it is in fact not. The hedge is actually pretty well clear of the site triangle per our definition. I also think these are actually, you don't have a mile-long view, but these are low-speed streets, and this is actually a safe condition. And the numbers support that, but.
This is your concern, right? This,
Yeah, so this is something we could revisit, but this is an example, again, of a compliant location that maybe people wouldn't think is compliant. So this is how we measure it. There are 2 conditions. There's the 15 feet at the intersections for streets. And look, this is a generalization. If you're on other bigger intersections, they might have a higher site triangle requirement depending on the speed. But I think what we're talking about, the single-family residential, it's uniformly 15 feet. And then we also have a requirement for 10 feet at the driveway views. And again, there's some nuance there when there's a sidewalk, when there isn't, but in general, it's 10 feet. There are exceptions for that. You're allowed, because it's about visibility, and obviously if you're in a car, so it contemplates that notion where you are allowed to have street trees and low shrubs surrounding those street trees of 30 inches tall for the shrubs and 6 feet clear window below the trees.
And what is the proximity of those shrubs? How close do they need to be? Isn't there a 24-inch requirement?
Yeah, I think they have to be, there's a radius around the trunk that they're limited to, and that's the only time you're allowed to have shrubs in the 3-foot step-off zone. And so again, what the code is allowed strictly today, only sod in the clear zone, and then street trees and low plants also in that clear zone when applicable. But beyond that 3 or 6 foot zone, everything you see here, absolutely legal. And again, those shrubs could be taller. But this is an example. The rocks are certainly landscape materials. The plants, landscape materials. And then, of course, there's an additional item of what has been traditionally allowed, which is gravel, because we have so many conditions where we have poor drainage or repeated parking. So that's where we are today with the language of the code today. I think there are things we could do right off the bat to improve compliance and enforcement. Obviously,
Can you
anything.
go back to the one with the buttons? Are the buttons okay or not?
You talking about those bumps right there?
Yeah.
I'd say these are. I would not classify them as just landscape materials. Again, open to interpretation. I don't think it's completely arbitrary. I disagree with that, but I do think it is open to interpretation. But that's the problem. Ding ding. We have a winner. This is not beyond the 3 foot. So these would not be allowed in that condition. That's where the violation is clear in that case.
And go back to the rope situation.
That one.
Yeah, we got
That's
a couple
good
of them in there.
That one's a
So
good one right there.
I think that one will
So
do.
on this one, explain that one again.
So in this case, we have
You
3
think
feet
that
clear.
That's rock for 3 feet?
Yeah. No, we've measured that. We measured it. Yeah.
It's the 3 feet when you have space for 3 cars, you said? How many houses in Key Biscayne only have space for 3 cars?
Very few.
So then?
So that's why I've been mostly saying 3 feet.
So if it's not 3 feet, it's 6 feet?
So if you have only space for 2 cars in your driveway, then you're required to have a 6 foot step off zone.
It's the other way.
Yeah, it's the other way. So in this case, yes, that is more than 3 feet. And then they would, if we interpret this, that these are landscape materials, and we have plenty of folks that want us to, as well as some that don't, then that is compliant.
So Jeremy, you had a slide earlier with a car parked right next to a shrub, a very large shrub. I think it was the first one you had up there.
It was the first picture.
Keep
All the way,
going back.
right where the definition is.
Right here.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so is that legal under the current code? Assuming that house has capacity to accommodate the appropriate amount of cars to
Yeah,
get 3 foot?
this would be compliant,
Well,
because that's
also-
more than 3 feet.
And that's also,
Yeah.
that's a traffic code, not necessarily, that's not a swale
That's a
code.
Swale code
No,
is the
but
grass.
it's not a
Swale
swale
code is the
code
grass.
item. That is a traffic police issue
The parking.
to ensure that people can get through. As long as people can get through, that is okay.
Okay, but let's just, for purposes of conversation.
Sure.
Since that's 3 feet, let's assume that distance is 3 feet from the road. Is that shrub to be that tall legal?
Yes,
Okay, so that's a lot of what people believe is illegal.
correct. I think so.
Yes.
I think so. I think there's a misunderstanding about what is actually allowed per the code.
You're exactly right. And that's,
Because this is a big conversation, because people think that people are reclaiming, that they're basically claiming additional, that's the perception, at least, excuse me, that's my
code
perception.
essentially allows that,
Yeah.
right? Like if particularly thinking about our really wide right-of-ways, where you're allowed to bring a hedge pretty far out, and if you decide not to have another hedge between your property line and the swale, then yeah, your yard feels a lot bigger.
One of the issues with having high hedges like that, especially when they're, well, including when they're on a corner, but when they're not, is the people walking, riding bikes, there's not enough, the sight line isn't sufficient. You're coming in and out of the driveway to tell that people
Well,
are coming.
let me get to enforcement, because I do think, particularly driveways, I will say I've ridden around with my code staff for that 15-foot setback. I didn't see any intersections that weren't compliant. I'm not saying that they're not out there, but I haven't seen them. And please, and I've asked you this before, and I've asked the public this. If you see them, tell me, and we'll go look. But I'd like to point out
again,
that I
that's
think
clear, that's on the 15-foot.
yeah.
That-
But I'd like to point out that a lot of them that you probably think are not compliant actually are. per the code and, or per how
change
we're
it.
doing it.
And that's,
Unless we change it.
Yeah.
So
Jeremy, I have a question.
let me, I'm almost done. So I do want to talk about get to what I think we can walk away with and start enforcing very, very quickly. Because there's one part of this is quite simple, right? Anything vertical that's in that 3-foot setback, I think we start compliance on right away. Because that is unambiguous.
well, before you go, this is important. So there is a short term, and then there's also a midterm, which is, I think, addressing this code that I think was a little confusing. So what we're doing, and one of the things we were tasked by the council was to come up, what can we do now? So that's what Jeremy is suggesting at this moment. And then as we work through that, then we can go into some of the
Yeah.
questions between 3 foot, 6 feet, all those things.
And some of these, we're going to need to do education campaigns for it too, I think. So how we roll out that compliance is also another topic. But the other thing we should work on right away is obviously line of sight clearances. And if you know one, please tell me if there's an issue.
So Jerry, Jeremy, to be clear, so currently, if they have the capacity in their driveway, the enforcement is 3 feet from the curb. So
Correct.
basically, they can put shrubs, trees, pretty much anything, as long as they're not
Well,
blocking sight lines.
again,
Well,
not trees.
Okay.
Yeah, but shrubs
A very
that
tall
look like
shrub,
trees.
very
Shrubs that
tall
look
shrub.
like trees,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
But we have
They
trees.
could put these fences that we're talking about, the sticks with the.
Look, that is open to interpretation, whether that's a landscape material or not. A case can be made. Certainly, you do see them you see them as barriers for marking planting beds all the time. So,
But the
yeah.
issue is, if the definition of the swale is because cars need to park there, then you really can't have anything vertical because it would
Certainly within 3
be
feet.
problematic.
The
But to
you can get
try to be as
part of a car off of the road
To
with
try
3
to be
feet.
as consistent and as easy to enforce as possible, if we start with anything within 3 feet, and then we say, okay, then we can start looking at things
Right.
down the road that may
Right.
need to be adjusted. At least we can say, hey, by the way, we're addressing anything from 3 feet.
This
Nothing
is
can go in.
and that's
here
exactly
yeah,
what
that's
we're
what
recommending.
that's what I
impede the
mean.
ability to park a car, for example.
Right, and that's
That's
exactly what
the
we're recommending.
easy. That's the easy one we can start compliance and enforcement action right away on. The line of sight triangles obviously as well, and then sidewalk clearance, which is really just any time plants are overhanging the sidewalk. That is a constant and never-ending battle. We are South Florida; things grow even during the drought, so that is constant. And then looking at removing all the non-landscape items for the right-of-way. Of course, again, we have to do some interpretation.
Explain, Jeremy,
there.
why that's different than the first one.
So beyond that 3 foot, you're allowed to have landscape materials, but occasionally we get intrusions of things that are very clearly non-landscape materials. So that would be the plastic barriers, that would be other vertical barriers that aren't something that's like sort of something you'd find otherwise in the landscape. So those are, again, pretty obvious ones for removal and immediate compliance action.
And to be clear, when you say right away there, that's all the way to the property line.
That is all the way to the property line.
So how do we, since people are putting these plastic things on in front of what they believe their property to protect the investment that they've made in their landscaping, we're incumbent to somehow deal with that issue, because that's really the big problem. That's why those things are being put there, is people are trying to protect their sod and trying to protect the investment they've made in that property. Now, whether they're doing it correctly or incorrectly, that's a different conversation, but
Right.
it gets, as a person who was dealing with this for quite some time, it gets to be a real pain in the neck to go out there and spend your whole entire weekend sodding, and then come back Monday morning and some landscaping guy has just run right over all the investment and energy you made. So I mean, perfectly frank, I put gravel in front of my house, and I went to the village manager and said, "This is zero landscaping," and he said, "It's good. We're not going to enforce it. Bracken, you're fine."
Yeah.
And
He
it's
didn't
been there.
give you a fine?
No, he said, you're fine. It's been there for 15 years. So,
Right.
But not that that's right. It's just my
Well,
point
look,
is,
it's
my point
a
is I have
practical
a
way of
neighbor
dealing
down the
with the
street,
problem.
Steve Powell, who's probably invested a small fortune in redoing his landscaping and all the rest of the stuff. And he's got these plastic sticks all over the place, right? Primarily because
His neighbor does.
No, Steve has it all the way around the corner. And
Around the
Steve
loop.
Powell. And you know,
To protect the land.
he's protecting his landscape.
He's protecting the sod,
And
yeah.
because there's always, on Harbor Drive, there's always landscaping vehicles parked all over Harbor Drive, right? And all he's trying to do is protect his yard. So what are we gonna do about that? Because that's really the issue.
Put that
So-
first picture up.
Because you can't tell him not to
Go back
protect
to
the
my
yard.
car again?
Yeah, the car, yeah.
First,
Oh.
all the way to the beginning. All the way
Like
back.
those things, those
It's
plastic
like the third
sticks,
slide.
which are a
Yep.
nuisance.
Getting there.
Okay.
There. Oh,
I mean, this is the question. You gotta decide. Do you want to be in the swale or you don't wanna be in the swale?
I'm actually okay with people protecting their swales because I get the concept of having to go out there and landscape it.
Right, but then there's nowhere to park.
I understand.
That's the problem.
And you've got commercial vehicles on the street and they could be on there for a couple of hours.
They're on the street anyway.
I can give you one solution for everything, and that is these, I don't know what the term is, but they're like concrete pavers that have holes in them with grass. What's the term for that, Jeremy?
There's a turf block.
And if everybody had that the first 3 feet down, and then put artificial turf to fill them, because if you fill them with regular grass, that doesn't
You
last.
die in a week.
So if you do that, and everybody down the street had uniform, all the streets had the same thing, then it takes care of your problem. All that does is cost us money.
All right, let's take a few questions. Let's start.
Tom McCormick, 680 Curtis with Councilmember Brackett. I completely understand where you're coming from. Do me a favor and visit Greg Hahn's neighborhood where I live.
Oh, I have.
So Curtis Wood, between Westwood and Enid, if that were a waterway, they would dub it non-navigable. I drove here today. There are 14 houses on the S, and 7 of them have bicycle reflectors on sticks, literally 1 inch from the pavement. And I cannot imagine the budget these people have for vendors. Every single day, there are 2, 3, 4, 5 vendor trucks there. And you know that feeling on Thanksgiving when you have all the people out at your house and you got one car that's sticking into the road and you feel bad about it? There's a house there. I don't know who it is. It's not me. They purchased more cars than they can park, and they park one of them to head in on the driveway, 2 wheels on the driveway. Half of the car is on Curtiswood on a permanent basis. It is a non-navigable road. So I'm with you. I love Steve Powell. I love protecting turf. But that road, you cannot make a left or right out of Greg Hahn's driveway half the days without stopping and waiting. It's like a you know the tunnels, you got to wait your turn with the light to flash. It is ridiculous. And just like when you walk out of a store, like you walk out of the subway and you can't back out because everybody parks in the fire lane. Just like when you can't park at Winn-Dixie and you see the Bentley parked in 2 spaces so nobody nicks their paint, it ruins your day when you see these people. We talk about Key Biscayne nice. This is not neighborly that you cannot drive Curtiswood half the time. And so I know that, Jeremy, the cops here get yelled at all the time, write tickets in Harbor. Now it's your turn. Like, again, I love education,
coming
but
your way,
this
Tom.
is not okay.
No.
The people have said, the street is mine, make me move. And it's happening at a few places. So thank you very much for this workshop. Thanks for what you're going to do. And at some point, one day, I'm going to get arrested because I'm going to walk around, pick up all these stupid bicycle reflectors and throw them at people's front doors. It's simply not fair.
So Tom, swale or street?
1 inch clearance from the street reflectors and cars parked in the road. And I know I like
So
I'm
you
in plumbing.
prefer cars on the road?
No, the opposite.
No, opposite.
Sir, they pull into the driveway with half their car hanging out on the street.
Joe, if you go down these guys'
I
street,
prefer to be able to ride on my street, which means maybe if they could use the swales
More, okay.
a little bit more.
All right.
Again, but something has to happen. And I don't think it's everywhere in the village, but there are these hot spots. So
All right,
anyway,
let's, Karen.
thanks, guys.
Tom, I would like to say, it's not my house. My house
It is not Greg Long's house. It is not.
Give it to Karen.
it's opposite your street, opposite your house. It's the problem. Down the hall, down the ranch.
I do see that you're asking for a 3-foot or 6-foot definition. No, hold on, I see that.
Yeah, just as a future
Yeah.
recommendation.
So my
somebody tell
question
us.
is, are architects and builders exploiting that? Because if you have a smaller driveway for 2 cars, then you have to have 6 feet. But if you build a bigger driveway with more concrete, you actually get to take more of your property because then you're only required to have 3 feet. So would that not be encouraging larger driveways?
In effect, it might be. I would say the market is driving larger driveways, though. Nobody's building a driveway that can only accommodate 2 cars that I have seen in a new set of plans. And I don't think this is the reason for that. I think that's just a market-driven thing. People want more cars to accommodate more cars.
Cecile.
I would like all of you to drive by Cypress. Lovely street, little street, but we have an issue that we brought it to council. I heard some council members saying that they were going to go with a sledgehammer to take the curbing that was, we taxpayers ended up paying it because the former building and zoning director was sold by the developer homeowner the idea that his house, in front of his house, had slight flooding or ponding when it rained, which long-time Key Biscayne or a resident of that area, and you can even ask Annika, who's the corner neighbor. She never had flooding there. She has flooding now because, according to Brett Moss, even the wrong curbing was installed. So that house, which is the second one, almost to Hampton, 210 Cypress, was allowed this curbing, which was the wrong curbing according to Brett Moss, and it continued to the next house in order to get to a drain that is on another
So
house.
your question
So-
is curbing, yes or no? Or
So not only there's a precedent there, and in another same developer, he got away with another curbing. We had many years ago a workshop, and we said that in the residential area, we were not going to have curbing. Either
Okay. everybody
everybody gets curbing or not selective curbing.
All right, let me,
But sir, the only other thing is that the neighbor on, and I was almost run over, the third neighbor, the second house that has curbing on Cypress, they park, or now the house sold, so hopefully it would not happen. Perennially parked in the street. Why? Because they not only had curbing, and they have a nice driveway, but they put a hedge to the curb. Not 1 foot off the curb, but right there. So when they backed out, and I'm walking with my dogs at night, they could not see me, number one. And number two, they don't have any swale. Everything was taken over. So
Okay.
we have curbing and swale.
all right,
Please
so.
check. Thank you.
Mr. Miranda, the curbing issue?
I'm looking here now at what she's describing. The curbing is, we do have curbing on some of the radiuses, and it was installed around the catch basins for water flow.
Yes.
But it's limited to how far it goes. It doesn't go all the way up the street. But it is intended for water flow, and it is something that is permitted
It was objected to.
within the right of way.
Ceci, objected to it when it was put in years ago.
There's also one across the street from Rice's house on Redwood, and they complained about it before construction.
Yeah.
And the building and zoning said it's in the plans, and
They put it in, I remember.
A bunch of us
I remember.
complained about it. Nothing was.
So, are you able to, are you supposed to park on top of it? Are you supposed to park adjacent to it?
You can mount a curb. You can drive over a curb. Now, the curb is 6 inches tall. If you want to drive a small car over it, you're going to have a problem. But you can drive a car over a curb. It is thick enough to drive a car over.
Yeah.
I mean,
Not your,
not going to break my curb.
But the issue in that one, and if we're talking that
All right, so-
specifically, is the bush.
So,
It's
do we
allowed to.
have any overall policy about curbing in the village?
I'm gonna mean they have to clear that.
As a policy,
No.
no,
No.
no. But curbing has been used in an effort to direct water to the catch basins.
It's all around, there's curbing for that purpose on Sunrise, on Ocean Drive, specifically for that purpose.
But I've heard you say, I mean, that's not your intent, to do more curbing.
No, currently, it's not our intent to do any more curbing. No.
And it be taken away?
I would not take it away at this point because it is directing water flow to those catch basins, and it is protecting the catch basins where it is
I think
installed.
she's referring to houses that are specific and they're not on a corner, and they were able to get away with curbing.
We would need to go look at that.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
It's to do with the setback, the 3 foot.
Can we get on the microphone, just so?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mind you.
I've got the microphone, so I should get the phone.
Should.
I've had my hand raised for a while. Okay. When you were talking about the shrubbery.
Now you gotta use it.
Now that I've got the microphone. When you were talking about the shrubbery, okay, it's really interesting because my neighbor does this too. Between our houses, he planted his, what's it called, clusia, those real stiff leaf things.
Yeah.
He planted it right on the property line. So therefore, it grows over to my property. But as far as the right-of-way goes, there's a lot of people that did their planting 3 foot back, but the material they chose grows right into the right-of-way. There's no way you can park in front of their house.
So we will work on a better enforcement of encroachment, because it really is any encroachment. That includes overhanging, certainly overhanging within 6 feet or so. So that's something we can improve enforcement on. What I can tell you from a plans review standpoint, like if we get an application when we're reviewing landscape drawings, we always tell them, hey, you've got to account for the plant growing out. What gets reviewed and what gets planted or what gets planted subsequent years by other landscape professionals is, we're not reviewing every landscape installation. But we will, and we do work on compliance. We prioritize sidewalks because that's really a bigger challenge, but we'll look at it for the 3 foot zone too.
I think the houses I'm thinking about are houses occupied by people for a very long time, okay? Second issue, which is really interesting to me, I don't know what the village laws are, ordinances. We've owned our house for 44 years. And we had land, when we bought the house and we did a little remodeling, the landscaper, worked on the front yard. Well, there was already, a runoff area, and he maintained that. So when you go by our house, water will go up on our lawn, but that's okay because it goes pretty much up to where the property would actually begin. I remember when my neighbors remodeled about 10 to 15 years ago, and they were actually made to tear out some of their driveway because there was no place for water to go off the street. But now that doesn't seem to be a regulation at all. People build up their front lawns all the way to the street. They sit way up, so there's no way anything's going to drain on that. So I'm really wondering about that.
So we do require that properties hold their stormwater on site, on the property.
And you know that's not happening, right?
And
There-
in the swales,
Submit a plan which says it's supposed to happen. The plan
Yeah.
indicates.
Thank you.
No, the plan indicates the grading will keep the water on the property to the first inch or whatever. I don't know.
It's the first inch, so it
So
does
it depends on the
overflow
site.
in a storm
So it's
event,
really up to the
in a big
inspectors
storm.
to make sure that the grading is according to plan. And if they do that, the water will stay on the property.
but to,
it's not
but to take it,
happening,
but to,
really isn't.
Listen, I'm
but
just
to take
saying.
it back, to the swales, if you look at, I can speak for the past year and a half now, all new construction, we have mandated that they have a proper swale constructed. In other words, that inverted V, okay? It's a gradual slope down, so if a car were to drive off, it's driving off smoothly and coming back on. If you look at Mr. Powell's property, his is a little more, but it is gradual at first and then it dips down. We purposely asked for that because of his driveways.
I understand.
So I think I can illustrate this actually, like all new construction since I've been in the village and my predecessors.
That's been a while.
And this is a perception issue, right? So imagine this is the property line. You might be sloped down to the street from there.
The property line, you're talking about the line beyond the swale.
I'm talking about where your property begins versus where the right-of-way begins.
Oh, okay.
So literally what's on the plat, you know, it's very hard to sometimes perceive this in the field, but on drawings and on the map, it's crystal clear. So we require that you have a V on the inside of that property to hold the water, so to prevent that water from overflowing. Or in the case where you have your driveway, there's a trench drain there that captures the water before it can flow into the street. Now, I think this is a perception issue because that water between here and here is flowing out, but that is the village's water at that point. So we are enforcing it. It might not be obvious, it might not be crystal clear walking by, but I can tell you that we are. And when we have retaining walls, those retaining walls are required to have an elevated portion adjacent to the ground so that that water is held on their property. And we even require those retaining walls to have a waterproof membrane so that the water is not just flowing out through the retaining wall. So it's something that I can't guarantee this was always enforced, but it's been a priority since we've heard
Okay,
complaints about it.
that's really good to hear.
Yeah.
Only one more question, Mark, and then okay, the third thing is, which is really interesting to me, I know everybody experiences it. There are so many driveways, corners I come to, where the landscaping, real landscaping, okay? You cannot see around that, and I know there's supposed to be, it's only supposed to be 3 feet high, and there are just so many places that it's not 3 feet high. And so if you really got to be careful when you're going to make your turn, because you literally cannot see what's coming at you.
Are you looking at this example?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I mean, that one's that's good because it's back at least. But I'm thinking
You can't
about
see the
if
car on
you
that
just
side.
take a drive around the key and look at the landscaping
Not on
people
that
have
street.
placed by their driveways.
I will say the driveway issue is going, the corners of streets isn't going to be that big of a problem. We might have missed one or two, but in general, they're in pretty good shape. I acknowledge, and I saw it in my recent, when I've been looking for it, there's a lot of issues at driveways, and that's going to be contentious because people have had the plants there for a long time.
But Jeremy, I think the problem is what you're pointing out is that basically it calls it, in that site triangle, you can build bushes or trees, not trees, shrubs, up to 30 inches tall.
As long as you're 3 foot off.
Yeah, we only around street trees though. It shouldn't be typical.
You can put landscaping and they're up to 30 inches. That's what your code said.
No, only around street trees.
In the site triangle,
Yeah,
pretty sure.
or in the 3 foot
And that site triangle.
drop off. No, in the site triangle could have
Well,
that.
they do,
yeah.
so as a
Yeah.
result, it's supposed to be 30 inches, but like you say, things grow. So that's what you're seeing.
They have to
So
maintain it.
maybe what we have to do is reduce that to a number, so when you'll be able to, by the time it gets to 30 inches, be able to tell somebody,
Yeah.
you have to cut it back.
We have
Because I know
very-
exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I've seen the exact same things.
So,
August,
Are
September.
you gonna let Mark talk now?
Mark
Hey.
the home.
Okay. Mark Freed, 525 Warren Lane. The parking, which is not part of this, and you said is police, is not mutually exclusive from the swales. If someone parks in the street, you're going to have someone's swales damaged, as Mr. Brackett spoke about. I'm on 525. There's a picture there of the two construction sites, one catty corner to me and one next door. I spoke to the, early on when they're parking in my yard, and every week I saw it going further and further up and my grass damaged. I spoke to the contractor and asked what they're going to do. They said at the end of the project, they'll replace the grass. So I'm believing them. The other is
It's pretty typical, actually.
another catty corner to us. There's a house that has parking for 2 cars. It's an old Mackel that's been added onto. It's not on the tax rolls yet, but
They're huge.
they put in a hedge, and it was originally 3 feet from the road, and it's a tall palm hedge, and they put gravel. We complained because they blocked the street. They moved it back, and they still park in the street. And they park in front of the neighbor's house on their swale. But I spoke to the police, and they said they're allowed to. Then I had a workman come to my house and park in the street, and that neighbor called the police, and the police said, we're going to give him a ticket for parking in the street. So I called the chief of police. He didn't have the answer. He said he'd get back to me. I've never heard from him. But does it look, when people park partially in the street in a swale, and there's 2 cars coming by in traffic, and there's 2 or 3 landscapers you're doing a chicane through, people just aren't going to wait. They drive in the street on the swale. So I say for years, because of the way they park, if you look at the houses across in the 485 to 535 part of Warren Lane, you're going to see that the grass has been run over. So how do you counter that? Put nice landscape rocks in there?
Well, I do think, one of our suggestions is that we actually codify the rules around gravel that we have tacitly been allowing for a long time. Like, let's go ahead and set a standard and something that's durable, something that doesn't go down our drains. Let me jump to that actually, because there's some important details that we want to do. But the idea is, like, let's create a standard for the type of gravel that we're going to allow. And or look, I'm starting with gravel. If we want to put something more like a turf pave, that's an alternative. But let's create a standard for it instead of it being completely ad hoc. So we get, and look, I don't think we need to have one material. Even in this list, I'm saying, like, let's specify the size of the rock so that it doesn't destroy our asphalt and it doesn't destroy our drainage systems. Let's make it something that is of a minimum hardness so it doesn't turn to clay and clog everything. So let's set some standards for it. But yeah, if you want white rock, if you want black rock, I think there's enough room for that sort of thing.
Jeremy,
but let's create a standard.
Jeremy, I appreciate the idea, and I think it's great.
Yeah.
But my concern is this, right? So Thomas got very valid concern. I mean, I drive down his street. I walk down his street pretty much every other day with my dog, and I know exactly what they're complaining about. And same thing happens on other streets. Okay, but what do you do for the neighbor who just invested $75,000 to re-landscape their yard, and somebody goes and drives a truck across it? Now, Mark's being very nice if he's willing to wait for the contractor to say, oh yeah, by the way, I'm going to replace all the sod in front of your yard for you when I get done with this project. Well, maybe you don't give the guy TCO or CO until he does it. If it's somehow because you know what? At the end of the day, we have to protect the people who spent significant amounts of money to basically on their yards. Because I'll tell you what, I had 5 people run over my yard, and those guys said, oh yeah, Mr. Bracken, we'll replace your grass. They never replaced my grass. They boogied as soon as those guys got the CO. Now, I'm hoping that doesn't happen to Mark. But
Well, the ones that are adjacent to construction are probably the easiest ones to control, because they do not give a TCO until they pass. No, so
They're
if
not
you're-
supposed to.
If you're five houses down,
How,
it's
how
kinda
many
hard to
people do
say.
you have, Jeremy, that you have
We
on
we
your
have we
staff?
have enough people to enforce that. I can tell you that because that is a inspection issue when we are reviewing the final inspections on a house, and we just need to make sure that right-of-way improvements
And
are a box
the
that needs to be
sidewalks are
checked.
part of that same inspection, right?
Right-of-way improvements, if they've damaged the right-of-way, like sidewalks are a great example. Like sidewalks get damaged by contractors all the time during construction. If it's in the middle or early in the construction process, we will allow them to patch it with something like asphalt because we anticipate, it has to be quick, and we anticipate damage continuing. That whole area has to be completely restored before they get their certificate of occupancy. We will, and I will talk to staff about making sure we're also looking at surrounding turf areas that were likely damaged during the parking for the workers. And we have the capacity to do that because we are going to these construction sites all of the time, and staff knows where people are parking and that sort of thing. So yeah, we can improve that.
And so there's an inspection conducted before construction starts where we look at the sidewalks and we look at if there are damage or not.
But that, Chris,
Obviously-
that's around the houses being constructed.
Correct. No, we go beyond the house in either direction.
All
We'll
across-
look a
across
house
the street?
over and either, maybe not across the street, but we will, on the same side of the street, we will check the surrounding area. When the house, before it gets CO'd, we come out and we do Public Works is with the inspectors. Our inspector goes out and looks and will force the contractor to replace all that sidewalk. Yes. And the contractors are, I'm going to say, most of the contractors here, not saying all, but most of them are very good. They go in and they replace more than what we ask them for, but, you know.
The problem is during, right? Because that's where it's frustrating.
Right.
But no, I think we do have an ability to control in and around a construction site, but I also think this is happening outside a construction site.
Yeah, I
And
think
that's where I can imagine would be frustrating.
I think the land, people, the general, look, I don't think anybody's intention is to go up and drive on somebody's lawn and destroy their lawn. I don't think that's their intention, but if the grass is wet, okay, and you drive on top of it and you pull off at any level of acceleration, you're gonna rip up all the sod that's put down. And so we have this constant battle, right? With the guys with the little sticks protecting their lawns.
So you're good with the rock thing?
I'm great with the rock thing.
I really think before we get to any of this, we have to make a decision, a policy decision about, as you said initially, do you want to park on the street or do you want to park on the swale? And, I feel for people who have beautiful, expensive manicured lawns, but if forcing people to park in the street is creating other problems, then maybe you shouldn't have that lawn. I mean, we have a small island with limited space, and we have a lot of, what I am primarily concerned about is not the appearance, but the safety issues. I keep saying the same thing over. We have pedestrians, we have kids on bikes going all over the place, and I'm out there all day, and I see these near misses all the time. All the time. And if where we force people to park impacts visibility, and how high those, whether they're illegal under our code or not, how high those shrubs are impacts visibility. And I keep complaining about the crosswalk by 7-Eleven and the crosswalk in front of the Villa Harbors. You can't, not the crosswalk, the roundabouts. You can't see pedestrians. And this is all over the island. So when we make decisions now, we have to think about that.
Nancy, isn't this really an acceptable amount of cars per lot? I mean, at the end of the day, it's really cars per lot, right? I mean, because if we have people that have 6-bedroom houses and they have 5 kids and they all have cars, where are they putting the cars? Because they're not all fitting on their driveway. And that's at the end of the day what's happening on Tom Street, because you have families who have substantially more cars than the original intent of the plotted land was, right? So we have all these cars, and they're not inexpensive cars, and people are parking them all over Tom Street and in Gregg Street because they don't have places to put them on their driveways. So they're putting them on. So maybe it's an issue of ratio of lot to car density.
And that house has a 2-car garage.
John, let's go to John.
Yeah, so I was going to echo exactly what Nancy said. I'll get back to that. Safety is the first issue you should be looking at. So you have a 3-foot and a 6-foot clear zone, and you have a swale. So just for discussion's sake, the swale is 15 feet. Let's say that that's the normal Mackle swale. So before I do it, do you know when the code was passed, when this first code was passed? I don't want to blame myself because I don't think I was involved with it.
I don't
Because
want
the
to say
code
something.
is-
Sometime in the past, John.
Yeah,
Sometime in the,
It's all
yes.
your fault, John.
But no.
It was passed
But
in
I could-
1999.
And I got out in 1998. And the reason that this was passed, why it came up, is because sidewalks were going up and people were complaining, don't want a sidewalk, and there was some compromise. I remember Ed Sherman, I forget the father's name. now.
Charles?
Not Charles, but his father, Fred. There was a petition that
In the family.
the petition to get the Swale code changed. Okay, it is a crappy code. Now that I've listened to all about it, in the following sense: the 3-foot, 6-foot, that was an arbitrary decision. If you're going to park a car on a swale on part of the 15 feet, it should be 6 feet. The car would not be on the road then. Okay, number one. Number two, when you talked about the V shape in the code, there's a drainage requirement that you have to maintain the water. The V shape, correct me if I'm wrong, starts from the edge of pavement to your property line?
No.
Where
No,
does
no,
it
no, no.
start from?
You're required to maintain water on your property.
From the
So the high point needs to be, essentially the high point's the
Okay.
property line.
Okay, so there's two different things, but there's a requirement to maintain water in the swale.
Correct.
In the code under drainage. It's totally different from, okay, so let's look at that definition. That definition, I believe, is from the edge of pavement to your property line. That is the definition of the swale.
Correct.
So the water needs to, it's part of the code. The water needs to be able to settle in that swale area and not run off into the road, okay?
It's actually a design standard. It's
Yes.
not part of the code, but
It's a
but
design
it's a design
standard,
standard
right?
for the state.
And
right of way.
under, I talked to Chris about this, there are a number of homes where they've put landscaping at the 3-foot clear zone line, and the grass slopes from that 3-foot line
Down.
to the road. So zoning code compliance review of, you need to make sure, because on Harbor Lane, I can tell you that happened. So the definition is you want to be able to maintain some water in that area. You're not going to change the 3-foot, 6-foot. I don't think you're going to do that because there's so many things that are out there. But the thing that surprised me, I was talking to Greg before the meeting, is the height of the material 3 foot away from the edge of pavement. There is no restriction on that height, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so, I could put an 8-foot hedge at 3 feet from my property line, correct?
3 feet from the edge of pavement.
Right.
But yeah.
I can't put a 6 or 8-foot wooden fence there because that's not landscape material, wooden fence.
Correct.
Okay, so now let's get back to, so I think if you're going to revisit the code, from what Nancy is saying regarding line of sight, there should be maybe a new code requirement for height in past the clear zone to your property line. Now, at your property line, there's a height requirement for fences. So it could be something different. It could be 3 foot and then the fence, I don't know if it's 6 or 8, but that's something that you should look at. That's number
Yeah,
one.
our restriction on fence height is 6 feet.
Right, so your hedge height in the 3-foot clear zone or 6-foot clear zone should be somewhat less than that. Okay. Now, could you go back to your slide where you talked about the short-term solutions? Yeah. So if a fence, a wooden fence is not allowed other than in your property line, it's not allowed in the swale, why would you allow posts, even if they're 2 foot high, with ropes, if they're made of wood? Because that becomes a safety issue.
So I think I have a good response for that. And there's a common sense element to it, right? Like you're allowed, you don't dispute that a boulder, for instance, would be landscape material.
Okay, and a
And
boulder, definition of a boulder is something that you can't,
A big rock.
a big rock,
You,
not.
you can't,
not-
a non-kickable rock for our purposes
Right,
here.
not one of these little white.
Non-kickable rock.
Yeah, a boulder,
Uh,
yeah, okay.
So a non-kickable rock is a landscape material.
Correct.
Boulder's about yay big. And adding a post in the ground about the similar height seems to be no more or less a risk.
I would think
And
that
I
they're
think
both,
it's-
yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I
and-
agree
and-
with
and
your
you can make
analysis.
the argument that they're both.
I think they're both
a
risks,
risk.
and you should decide from a safety point of view what can be in the swale
Right.
and how far away from the road it could be. And so you should not be able to put, if you had a hedge, a 3 foot hedge, and you had little rocks in front of it, that's visible. But if you have boulders, whatever size, spaced 5 feet apart, they're not visible at night. There's no line, and only if they're a foot high. Your hedge is going to be more than a foot typically. So I think you need to look at that when you start looking at enforcement, not only in the 3 foot zone, but what you will allow in the swale. Because there are people that have a clear zone of 6 or 9 feet. They didn't plant. But yet I've seen homes where they have 3 foot or 4 foot from put in vertical posts. Shouldn't be allowed. That's a safety issue if a car has to swerve off. And it looks
So
like,
what,
it looks,
what I'll say is the safety issue can be addressed, right? You can, and in fact, when we've worked with homeowners, because a lot of the times we have asked them to move them back when they were previously close. We're like, hey, you really need to move this back. They're embedded in sand. They get pushed over by a car. They're not flipping cars. So when we've worked with homeowners, and again, all these things could be addressed via design guidelines. Like we could have design requirements so that they are only made safe.
Jeremy, there are ones that are poured concrete. Okay?
Yeah, and so when we've worked with homeowners, we have said, hey, you've got to put them in sand. They've got to be movable.
But right now, our situation is we really are saying that you can currently put anything from 3 feet back. You can put up a 14-foot hedge if you choose.
Hedge, yes. Fence, no.
Okay.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
But that also means any landscape material, boulder, what we could call stakes, whatever you happen to want. We've decided that right now, anything from 3 feet you can't put it anywhere 4 or 3 feet. But right now we can enforce 3 feet because that's all we really.
That's simple, easy to do. Right. Tomorrow we can start enforcement.
So we could go out to the community and say, okay, all these fences that are farther in, all these stakes or whatever you want to call them, posts with chains, can't be within 3 feet of the road.
That's what he says right up.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. And that seems like the only thing we can enforce right away, easily. And
Yeah. I mean, these are sort of, this is our low-hanging fruit, and I hate that phrase because this is not going to be. We're going to have plenty of conflict and plenty of trouble with this.
Doing justice.
So is it clearly enforceable through the code? Yes. Is it going to be? I'm sure you'll hear about it. Some of you will hear about it too.
So I'll finish up. So you have to kind of define what you mean by landscape material, clarify it, and go forward with that. And I would recommend, obviously what I've said, what isn't landscape material. Mm-hmm. And I would recommend that if you're going to allow boulders or any kind of decorative low-lying fence, because it's not considered a fence.
Barriers.
Barrier, that it be at least 6 feet. And the reason 6 feet is from a safety point of view. Okay, so I'll leave it at
those
that.
are all good. And look, and Jeremy's not advocating white little fences at all. He's just saying what has gotten there over the long term.
Yeah, I'm just saying how we got here.
And if we choose not to do that, then we choose not to do it. But just there's a lot to be done if we choose to do that. And that's why we just want to make it clear.
Okay, I got 1 minute. 324 West Heather Drive, Charles Sherman. I want to know why there are so many ruts in front of the mayor's house, who's two doors down from me. Is he doing it or is somebody else? And the other one is a request to Jeremy. Take a walk with me down Heather and Westwood, and you'll be thrown off the sidewalk by the hedges that are halfway into the walkway. And you guys wanted sidewalks. You can't walk down them anymore.
Look, like I said, we try and enforce on that all the time. You said West Heather?
You gonna cut the hedge?
No, we give them warning to the homeowner, and then if they don't do it, then we give them a written warning. Okay,
But that's why we're here, Charles.
West Heather?
You wanna take a walk with me?
Yes.
Now, but Charles, that's why we're here.
Yeah,
That's why we're here,
that's
Charles.
why we're here.
Wait a second, I have the mic. I have the mic.
Colin has the mic.
I'd like to have you think about a larger question. What is this village going to look like in the next 20, 30, 50 years? Is it going to be just hedges blocking off the streets? I'm not talking about the 3 foot, 6 foot. We changed the zoning when I was on the council. There was a huge Zork committee. This is in the late 90s. This is in the late 90s, and there was a big change in the zoning. We moved the setback of the houses. I think whatever it was moved to, I believe, 20 feet from the property line, or 25 feet from the property line. The great vision, we had charrettes, we had people with diagrams, showing what this would look like. People are supposed to walk by on the street. You're supposed to be able to see them and wave at them. Communication, friendliness. Where did that vision go? All the problems on Curtiswood at the far end of the street are all new houses. They were all built to the new zoning code. The rest of the street, our end, where Tom is and where I am, we're set way back from the street. We have lots of parking, either on our lawns or in our driveways. Those other houses all have huge hedges put up that are now 8, 10, 20 feet high. This is not what we envisioned when we changed that zoning. And I would like you to think long-term about what is our village going to look like as every new person comes in and has their own vision of what they want their little square to be like, and not what the whole village is like. That's what zoning is about. So zoning and codes have to be thought about first in the large scale. What do we want this to look like? You don't see any people with 6 foot fences, on their property line. It's these huge hedges. Some of it may be cultural. I don't know. That's what people want to be enclosed rather than open. But what do we want? That's what the next big decision is. The rest of these little things we'll sort out.
Thank you for your comment. One more. Yeah, because we never let you have any input, so I guess today we're giving you input.
Thank you.
Twice, Mr. Mayor.
Well, would you allow homeowners to move in without a CO?
No.
Sure? Okay.
Yes.
Until everybody complies, because I'm not going to talk about the yacht club and the trees that they owed us.
They have a TCO, and they have gotten their trees, yes.
They got the
That's
trees?
been confirmed, thank you.
So many years after the agreement. My other question is, extensive or radical remodeling on an older house, do they have to comply with providing you a landscaping code? I am asking, for example, my neighbor had they're remodeling the house. They did not destroy the house, so the shell of the house remained. They did away with all the trees. Do they have to comply with the landscaping code?
There are tree requirements when they've done tree removals, yes.
All right, thank you.
All right. All right, let's see if we can wrap this up. Steve, walk us through what we've talked about tonight.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, and actually, this was actually a very good workshop. I think we all became much more aware of what our code is, and I think we realized that we have a very conflicting code that may not be trying to achieve our vision. And so I really appreciate Mr. Hahn's comment towards the end. I think, and why we also go back 2 slides if you would. Why we're making recommendations in steps, right? Because I think there's some things we can address now. They're not going to solve the problem by any means, but I think we're going to begin to set the example of where we want to go. We are going to have to come back, and that's what the next slide says, and we're going to have to relook and do a deeper dive into the code to make sure it achieves the vision that we're looking for. But our recommendation right now are fourfold right here. And obviously you guys can't make a decision here, but you can indicate if you'd like me to bring forward to the next council meeting these 4 in totality. And I think, gotta read we already have in the code damaged items in the right-of-way during construction, right? That already exists?
Yeah, we're covered.
Okay, so that's, I wrote that there. And then also, we heard pretty clearly, and a number of time, police enforcement as well.
Correct.
And whether that's clarified in our code or whether that's part of county code, state code, I think we could need to get some feedback from the police chief so that council better understands what those rules are, because in the end, I think we all understand this is about safety. And also then about aesthetics, those are 2 big ones. So if the council is comfortable for us to bring forward to the next council meeting to make these decisions, we can do it, or whether you believe we need to have another workshop to go in more detail.
Don't come near me, I'm sick.
I think that we have consensus on moving forward with these.
And if you go to the next one real quick, this is where we talk about the bigger picture. You know, we have to have that conversation. If it's 3 feet, 6 feet, you know, do we create a standard? Is it more? Is it all the way to the property line? We got to ask those questions. Are we going to consider an alternative to sod? And if so, what is that going to be defined as?
We absolutely need an alternative to sod.
And then, so we can even bring that forward if we have time.
I think we can do that
And then,
relatively smooth.
Assume we're gonna redo the island, who's gonna pay for it? Is that gonna be paid for by the village, or the individuals? If they want it to be uniform, want it done properly, maybe something the village should pay for, rather than piecemeal people do it now and then, or whatever else next election.
well, that goes to the vision part, what
yeah,
we
I
want
think-
the village to look like in the future.
What we're proposing here, and this, again, recommendation subject to change, is that we create design guidelines or a standard material, but there still be some variety for aesthetics within that material selection.
I really think you should consider a zoning code, a ZORC thing that has something to do with ratio of house to amount of cars, because
That's a good idea.
I think the car issue is a problem, okay? And the fact that people have 5 cars in their driveway is just not really okay. I mean, I appreciate the fact everybody's entitled to have a car, but you know what?
Is the Zork looking at that?
No.
No, not looking at it. I don't know if Chad's listening or not, but can you, are we able to do that? Dictate
Dictate
how
the
many
number of cars per property.
per property?
I know from an
That's a
enforcement
challenge.
standpoint, it would be a challenge, because
Are they visitors? or
what
are
I
they
would
actuals?
do is, then I would start parking in the Swale, which is public right-of-way, and, you know, maybe the car's not registered to that property. There would be significant enforcement challenges.
I think it would be very challenging to do that. I don't think that we can do that. We obviously can provide for regulations which result in people having to have less cars. For example, if there's a 2-car garage only, if driveways can only be of a certain size, and through enforcement and regulations of where people can park and where they can't park, that's how you would address it.
Of course, shrinking driveways will lead to more on-swale parking. This is the challenge, right? There's
Jerry, I'm just trying to
we
think
get it.
out of the box and
Yeah.
trying to address some of these issues, because at the end of the day, we all know there's too many cars on the island, right? So I mean, that's
Yeah, and
kind
it's
of a
not
known
just
issue,
creating
right?
a swell problem, it's creating
Yeah. I mean,
parking and
if you had
traffic
less
problems
cars,
as
there would
well.
be less people parking on the swale and more room for the landscape contractors to park their trucks. Right?
Well, let me just tell you what I saw Sunday. On sunrise, a slew of cars came. There are some cars that are parking in the swale because their parking lot is being under construction, repaved or something.
Right.
Slew of cars that park there from off the island for beach access.
Sure.
And so it was half on the swale, half in the roadway. It was obstructing traffic. It was all the way down the road. It was terrible.
You know, I found out from people, off the key who might come visit me when I say to them, just park in the yard right there. I said, park in the yard? I said, yeah, it's okay, just, park right there. Oh, we could never do that. We could get a ticket. And so there's a lot of confusion for people about what they can do.
We do it all over.
All right, that's the education piece we gotta take care of.
So, do want to just suggest, I think we've got clear direction for coming back with a proposed sod alternative, because again, that feels like pretty low-hanging fruit. I think beyond that, I don't think we have anything we can walk away from and immediately come back with legislation. I think that's probably more for additional discussion or.
Yeah.
But should it be 3 feet or 4 feet or 5 feet or 6 feet? When cars off the road, cars are blocking the streets. Is 3 feet adequate, or do we want to make 4 feet? We want to make, I'm just saying.
Well, that's the challenge.
This is my
That's the
question
challenge,
for
Councilman.
you.
That's
my question for you.
Yeah, that is truly the challenge, is because, one of the reasons we recommend short-term 3 feet is because that's going to be a little more acceptable. When we start going 6 feet, it's going to be a challenge. We're going to get a lot of pushback.
Maybe it's 4 feet, I don't know.
No, I know, but
You get a car two-thirds off the road with 4 feet, just more room on the road.
I'm gonna.
and we're not arguing one way or the other, Ed, but what we're saying is 6 feet is going to be,
I'm just saying something to
yes.
consider. The other thing to consider is you're talking parking, you're talking about, whoever said that, I can't remember we have bigger number of cars, need a bigger house, whatever. I think with the Zork, what they're doing now, is to make sure when you have more than X bedrooms, you need more than X parking spaces on the driveway, under the house, as well as the driveway. So that basically you get the cars off the strip, preaching that the last couple Zorks went nowhere. But that's something which will really help the parking situation.
Because as we raise the BFE, we'll have more room to park, right?
Yeah.
You give them an incentive to.
Underneath the house.
Yeah, I think you can essentially dictate it if you have green space requirements and you require a parking spot per bedroom, for instance. I'm not saying that's it. I'm just saying that, for instance, yeah.
Some
You
sort
can
of
make a
ratio is
ratio.
what you're saying.
1.5, 1.5, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a question to Steve for clarification. At the next council meeting, you're going to come back with recommendations for short-term actions.
Right, go back one
including, go back to that, including the removal of pretty much anything that is 3 feet to the road. And I understand that. But, so you have to define what it is landscape material from the removal of all non-landscaping materials from the right-of-way. Now, the right-of-way is not the clear zone.
Correct.
Right-of-way is everything.
To the property
So
line.
your challenge for the next meeting is to come back.
To define that.
Yeah.
Define what you will not allow in whatever zone.
Definition of landscape material.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and we'll start with the code. The code has its own definition, and then I'll cite specific examples of how we've interpreted it to date, and listen to guidance on that.
That's fair enough.
But I think the important thing, Mr. Mayor, is really for us to take a step and get moving.
Yes.
Right? I think if we go and start trying to whack too quickly, I think we're going to get a huge amount of pushback. So let's do some of these smaller things.
And then
start to make some definitions.
And at the same time, you're doing the education piece to let people understand what it is.
What it is we're
what
trying to-
isn't the swale area.
Correct, and why we're trying to
Joe,
achieve
can
it.
we also put a more serious responsibility on our code enforcement people to make sure that people's grass is protected when construction is going on in their neighborhood somehow?
Right. So Jeremy, that's a good point. after you put the sod in, it needs some time to grow in.
We
so-
allow temporary protection for sod. However, our code does not prohibit construction vehicles from parking in the swale
Maybe we should.
or visitors. Right. Yeah.
Speaking of visitors, this is Maria's.
Yeah, no, I mean, you can park, somebody can park right on your swale, right in front of your house all day long if they
Yes.
want without any.
Yes, they can.
And they do, by the way.
Yeah.
on our-
So one thing to think about, Maria's idea is, and Nancy, I think this might address what you said about all the visitors parking on Sunrise, is residential parking. So you know, the stickers. Right, stickers like Miami Beach has. This is for Miami Beach residents, you have a sticker. So it's something to think about that perhaps that fits into the plan.
And you can also limit the number of stickers per house to address the more cars.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Charles Gables does it.
Miami Beach does it.
Miami Beach does it.
Miami Beach does it all over the place.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful town.
Coral Gables.
Be careful what you quote for Coral Gables rules.
got
I live
taken
there.
to court and,
Yeah, there's no
and was
residential.
not able to keep people off the swale, yeah.
Well, there's a time limit. No, Miami Beach has a time limit or something.
No,
I don't
Miami
know.
Beach has a strict no.
Oh, I guess, I think it's no overnight without the, and in posted zones without the sticker.
Okay, let's start with this.
Yeah.
We can have further discussions, and let's see what this looks like when you bring it back to us.
I have one question. How long is it gonna take you to do this?
So we'll start enforcement on the vertical stuff right away. You know, it's going to be
Oh.
part of
No,
their
no,
no,
other
no.
duties.
After it
We need to have an
comes.
education process. Well, of course.
Oh, for total
No,
compliance?
just for the new short-term fixes. How
So-
many months will it take to get it done?
So I think the one that's going to be challenging here is the 10-foot sight triangles at driveways. And I think that one, we need to do a lot of education before we just start dropping violations on people. Because this is landscape that's been there for probably decades in some places.
How long will it take to notify the people then, maybe not to rectify the problem?
Well, we'll come back with that recommendation.
Jeremy.
Let
Yeah.
us
Yeah.
step back, let's think about it. Yeah, this is a few month process.
Jeremy, in the,
I think that's probably reasonable, yeah.
is it?
But there has to be an education component, and we just can't start approaching people's houses without that.
Steve, is it reasonable to come back for the council meeting with a recommendation of shrubbery height in front of a home? To address, because that is.
Well, I can come with a recommendation,
that
but I
addresses-
think,
that-
yeah.
But that addresses the issue with the sight lines for
Safety.
cars already.
Are you saying shrubbery height in the 3 foot?
In the three.
In the beyond,
No, when
beyond the
pe-
clear
when
zone.
people,
Yeah.
people park, if you put a hedge on the 3 foot line, and that hedge can be 10 feet tall, okay, that's blocking the driveway, that's blocking all the sight views, okay? If that hedge is limited to 6 feet or 8 feet, whatever we come up with, you should be able to see around it. I mean, because 6 feet seems a reasonable number. I mean, that's what I don't know what's reasonable.
Yeah, I think that's probably stepping off too quickly, because that's gonna be a lot of work. I think let's tackle this, because there's,
Okay.
but I guess I'd be clear, are you talking in the entire right of way? You talking 6 feet,
I'm talking
3
about
feet?
if you plant a hedge in the front of your home that's on 3 feet on the border of the driveway, there should be a height. We should have a height limitation, whether it's 8 feet or 6 feet or 10 feet, whatever it is. We should have a height limitation so that they're at least all uniform in height, because now they're all over the place.
And
And
the other thing is, for the next council meeting, do you think we could come up with a definition of what landscape materials are and are not, and not leave it
Yes.
to
Yes.
discretion? Okay.
Yes.
We will.
I'll present you what the code says, and then I'll present the examples of how we've interpreted it. And we've actually been very consistent with the interpretation. So people might disagree, but we've been
But
consistent.
that'll also
Yeah.
give the council an opportunity to see what that is and weigh in
And-
on
Right,
that as a
and maybe
recommendation.
you want to alter that. Yeah.
Okay, let's bring it back, and we look forward to continuing conversation on this issue. Thank you all for coming tonight.
March 10th.